Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, I'll be featuring the case of Shawna Nelson. Let's go ahead and find out more. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Shawna Nelson was born on October 1st, 1971. She grew up and settled down in Greeley-Will County, Colorado. In August 1996, she married her boyfriend, Ken Nelson, and they were married for 10 years, and they had 2 kids together, Dylan and Jordan. Now, one of Shawna's closest friends was a woman named Michelle Moore. This friendship developed in August 2004 when Michelle was a Weld County Deputy Patrol Officer. However, their friendship quickly developed into being more than just friends. Shawna also met Ignacio Garris almost immediately after she started working as a dispatch communications merger between Greeley and Will County. Shawna said in the spring of 2004, they started flirting. He was in his car and she was in dispatch. In July of 2004, their flirting became physical. During their affair, Shawna found out that she was pregnant, and Ignacio wanted her to have an abortion immediately. So she did. She had an abortion at Planned Parenthood in Fort Collins. Now, Ken Nelson, Shawna's husband, he became aware of the affair. She said she left her journal out, but not intentionally, in a place where Ken read it. Shawna says, quote, "Ken told me to make a choice. I told him I wanted our relationship to work. I did not cease my relationship with Ignacio," end quote. She also said she never told Ken. He learned out about it when she moved out at the end of January. One day, Shawna was waiting by Ignacio's truck when he came out after a Department of Revenue hearing. There was no physical confrontation. They just talked. He stated he was in fear that Shawna would say they had an affair to his wife, Heather. So they broke up. Ignacio then went to Disney World with his family. When they came home after Christmas, Shawna stated, quote, "I drove by their house and saw their car, so I called, but he wouldn't answer," end quote. She then said she kept trying to get a hold of Ignacio, so much so that he had to change his phone number. However, one day at work, he answered his work phone and gave Shawna his new cell phone number. During their breakup, he says Shawna never told his wife Heather about the affair or the pregnancy. So, after several months, they resumed the affair. On July 4th, Shawna found out she was pregnant again, and Ignacio wanted her to have another abortion. Shawna says, quote, "I wouldn't do it. I didn't expect anything of Ken, but I wanted to give Ken a heads up because it was embarrassing. Ken had initially filed for divorce, but upon learning of the pregnancy, reconciled and agreed to raise the boy as his own," end quote. However, Shawna was still maintaining her affair with Ignacio. In fact, she says she was angry at Ignacio. She saw him at a party and told him she was upset with his behavior. She thought they had plans to talk and didn't appreciate being disrespected. When she told him again about her pregnancy, he says, quote, "Almost the first thing out of Ignacio's mouth was, 'We need to take care of this,' end quote. But Shawna wouldn't do that. So Christian was born March 2006. And still, the affair between Shawna and Ignacio continued. Shawna then stated she got a call from Ignacio December 16th saying he wanted to break things off. So she gave him an opportunity to change his mind and would call and text him, thinking that would work. Michelle, Shawna's friend, says she was aware of Shawna's affair with Ignacio because Shawna had confided in her about their relationship. Shawna often told her she was in love with Ignacio and she didn't get along anymore with her husband Ken, and she would often call Heather a hag, as well as some other choice words. Now, she disliked Heather. In fact, Michelle would say Shawna hated her. Shawna believed that Heather wasn't good enough for Ignacio and that she, Shawna, was better for him. In fact, Shawna would frequently drive by Ignacio's home. Michelle said Shawna told her that Ignacio ended up telling his wife Heather about the affair, about everything, and they decided to work things out as a family. Shawna, upon hearing this, became pissed, but then said he made a good choice. Now the affair ended for good. A month later, January 23rd, 2007, Heather's workday at the credit union ended, so she and the employees closed the bank for the night and were walking together to the parking lot. One of the coworkers that was there that night stated she saw someone dressed in dark clothing walking in the alley behind the bar. She heard that individual come up and tell Heather, quote, "You ruined my life," end quote. Then 2 gunshots were fired at Heather. Witnesses said it was a female in a hooded outfit with a green Ford F-150 and blue license plates. After the shooting, police found a black mask under the seat of the suspect's truck. The shoes worn by the killer were also tossed only about 700 feet from the same pickup truck. This pickup truck belonged to Ken Nelson. However, the mask had Shawna's DNA on it. The shoes had Shawna's DNA in it, as well as some gunshot residue. In addition, gunshot residue was detected on some of the clothes that Shawna was wearing. The tracks in the snow by the killer's vehicle also matched those of Ken Nelson's truck. Ken was not driving his truck that night. Shawna, however, was, and this was completely out of character for her. Prosecutors put 40 plus witnesses on the stand and introduced 120 exhibits. Defense attorneys put forward 2 witnesses, Shawna Nelson and an independent investigator. Shawna Nelson's one-time best friend, Michelle Moore, pleaded guilty to being accessory to the crime after prosecutors accused her of helping to plan the murder. Michelle testified during Shawna's trial that she and Shawna had discussed how to kill Heather Garris. Michelle stated that Shawna said she couldn't use her own vehicle because everybody would recognize it. Shawna then talked about using her husband, Ken's truck. In court, when Ignacio was asked if he or his wife had ever received any other threatening emails, he said no, just from Shawna. He said all threats that came in were just from Shawna. When the verdict was announced, Shawna displayed no emotion. The verdict read, guilty of first-degree murder. Shawna declined the judge's invitation to make a statement before he handed down her sentence. Her family, sitting behind her, shook their heads and appeared to be in shock. The jury got the case on Friday and reached a verdict at 9:45 Monday. The trial lasted 10 days, and it took jurors 5 hours and 45 minutes to reach that unanimous guilty verdict. Shawna was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, the mandatory sentence for a first-degree murder conviction. That is the case of Shawna Nelson. Thank you for sticking around for another episode of Danny After Dark. Do you have any questions or comments on the case? Leave it down below. Let's be interactive. Do you have a suggestion for any cases that you'd like me to cover? Leave it down below. You may see it featured on an upcoming episode. Until next time, remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us.